Hi there. Today I wanted to read from some more of the Plates of Yehoshua, and this one is specifically from the first garden. A couple of weeks ago, I did a reading of another chapter from here, and I mentioned that I wanted to get to this one too. Uh, this one is the Feast of Keeping and the Seven Doors, and so uh, come along with me and give it a listen. Chapter 10 The Feast of Keeping and the Seven Doors. And it came to pass that the council appointed a feast to seal the law of hospitality and the law of work. They named it the Feast of Keeping. They built a great lodge with 7 doors, each turned to a sacred direction, and a hearth at the center like a small sun that obeys. Gizig Ikwe hung the garments of honor upon a beam during the feast, that memory might sit in the rafters and watch the bowls. Aki and Nini set the staff of light above the main door to teach arrivals that welcome can shine. At the door of the east they laid baskets of first corn and the prayer of beginnings. At the door of the south, bowls of broth for warmth and laughter. At the door of the west, they placed a basin for washing, that mistakes might travel no further. At the door of the north, a blanket for endurance. At the door of above, they hung a flute that plays when the wind is wise. At the door of below, they placed stones from each field. At the door of within, they set a mirror of polished ice to remind the heart whose face it wears. A messenger taught this parable. A house with one door becomes a fort. A house with too many doors becomes a barn. Wisdom chooses 7 and keeps watch. And the people understood that safety without openness is a famine with walls. They invited travelers from the rivers, hunters, menders, bearers of news, and each was given a door to enter by lot, that no man might think himself first by habit. A woman from the south wept at the door of the west and washed her hands thrice. The third wash sounded like a bell, and she was light in the shoulders. Children acted a small play of the hill and the crossing. Laughter did not cheapen memory. It trimmed sorrow to fit daily wear. The serpent's rumor came again like a moth to flame and singed itself upon the law of keeping. For keeping is a screen for foolishness. Aki and Nini proclaimed a modest law. Let no mouth eat alone while a neighbor counts coins, and coins learn their place beneath bowls. Gizig Ikwe taught the girls to braid 7-strand cords for the doors, each strand a vow. Begin, warm, cleanse, endure, lift, root, remember. A youth asked, which door is God's? And an elder answered, all 7, and the 8th you forgot, the door through your listening. A messenger spoke softly, do not draft heaven into your feasts as ornament. Invite heaven as guest of honor, and you will sit in your own house with awe. Then the feast of keeping opened, and songs walked through the doors without tripping. The fallen sent a man who praised too quickly. They fed him slowly, and his praise recovered honesty. A child choked on bread, and a woman struck his back with the rhythm of the drum. He breathed again, and the drum kept time with gratitude. Aki and Nini set a small law for anger. Let every quarrel walk once around the lodge before speaking. Many quarrels got tired and went home. At moonrise, the aurora wrote strange letters above the ridge. A messenger read them. Be faithful with small doors. I will keep the gates you cannot see. And they bowed as men bow to a truth that makes them taller without lifting their feet. The 7 doors were closed at last with cords of promise. The cords did not break when the winter later pulled on them like a child. The feast sent bread to the river and to the distant snares, and fish came nearer to nets that knew how to share. Gizig Ikwe spoke a parable. A bowl that expects God to arrive is cleaner than a temple that expects applause. And they kept bowls cleaner than temples. The serpent's spies tried to count the doors and forgot to count the hearts. Their report was therefore unhelpful to their master. In the quiet after the feast, the lodge breathed like a beast that has chosen kindness, and the people slept near the hearth with faces soft. Thus the feast of keeping stood among them as a long rope tying days together. Whoever reads, keep your doors, and heaven will keep your roads. So I first stumbled across this one as I was pondering Thanksgiving last month and thinking about my preparations for that. And I thought it was really interesting. Some of the things that jumped out at me was where it talks about a house with one door becomes a fort, and a house with too many doors becomes a barn. So, and then following that up also with, and the people understood that safety without openness is a famine with walls. So that one really jumped out to me because I feel like how we live in a very individualistic society. And I know that collectivism has become kind of a dirty word, collectivism has tainted the idea of acting as a collective and has tainted the idea of having enough of a community that we're actually somewhat vulnerable to each other. And what we very frequently end up doing is we end up having essentially houses with only one door, and we do treat our homes as if, they're more fort-like. And instead of having openness and, access and interchange with friends and trusted people, we keep our boundaries up. And so much of that, I think that's kind of tending toward us, being too atomized and too separated. So there's definitely wisdom to be pondered here of, especially where it says wisdom chooses 7 and keeps watch. So that keeps watch part is, I think, the part that we frequently don't feel like doing. And so we just shut everyone out. But that was one of the things that really struck me when I read this the first time. And also, the bit in 17 where it says, do not draft heaven into your feasts as ornament. Invite heaven as guest of honor, and you will sit in your own house with awe. I don't know how to explain it, but I have a sense of what it means when it says, do not draft heaven into your feasts as ornament. It's very easy for us to, make a big show of, how religious we're being or how devout we're being. But that feels like drafting heaven as ornament. And instead trying to create an environment where we're inviting the divine to come and participate with us, and we're honoring whatever presence we can receive. I feel like that's what this is inviting us to cultivate. But this is just a great section. And actually, this was the very first one. Like, it's a big book. Like, I got a print edition while it was briefly available, and it's 600 pages. And so, like, I was not ready to do a linear read. And so I just randomly opened up and I hit this. And this is the first thing from that big 600-page collection that was labeled Mamu Winini. Hopefully I'm saying that right. Apologies if I'm not. I'm still figuring out some of these pronunciations. But this was the first chapter that I ran across, just because I wanted to jump into something. And it gave me a lot to think about. So hopefully, if you go to read these records, this app that I'm reading out of, that I'm showing you here, is the Sacred Records app that is available in the Google Play Store. And, you know, if you sign into the app and subscribe to be able to read these records, I hope that you find things that are as interesting and that feed your soul like these have fed mine. Now, I know that some people will say that they think this information ought to be free. That is a nice idea. I do feel like it is worthwhile to try and support the efforts of spreading these teachings, and that is, as I understand it, what the kind of the money that's made in publishing this app this way is going to basically be for helping people spread these particular words, and also be able to afford to gather together for ceremony. So from what I understand, it is a worthy cause. So definitely go and subscribe and read. There's just so much in these records. And I don't know when I'm going to have enough time in my life to get through them all, but I am going to plow through and find what I can and share what I feel moved to share. But thanks for listening. And I hope that there was something in here that was helpful to you. And if there was, definitely subscribe. I'm going to keep trying to publish more things like this.